So I was in my hometown this morning and I popped into HMV for something or other. Couldn't find it. And on the way out, I had a bit of time to spare. So I had a browse down their merchandise shelves and I stumbled across some of the Eaglemoss Batman figures, which I was surprised to see there because Eaglemoss went bust, what was it, last year? Year before? And if you've been following me for a while, you may remember or have seen that I have from time to time bought some of their Alien figures or Doctor Who figures and gave them a little bit of a tweak painting wise, and some of the Star Trek ships as well, and also the Batman Decades figures. When Eaglemoss went belly up, I kind of like just gave up the idea of it, figuring that everybody would just bung them on eBay at vastly inflated prices. So that was the end of that. So I was very surprised to see a few of the Batman figures there today discounted. All right. Yeah, if you're a long-term time follower of mine, at least 3 years, I can't believe it's 3 years. I've just checked back. 3 years ago, I had it in mind to get each of the Batman Decade figures and give them a little bit of a tweak of paint job and then have a nice row of Batman through the years, right? And I started it, but I guess I got sidetracked by this, that, or the other. So I thought, well, why not? They're there on the shelf. So they had the 40s and 50s one, they had the 70s and 80s one, and the 2000s. All right, so I've bought two. All right. They didn't have the 60s. The 60s is the one I need next. And I'll show you why, to save you going back 3 years. Yeah, so this is the Batman of the 40s, which I redid. Basically, I redid his skin, the utility belt, and gave him his lilac-y purple gloves. That was all. I mean, it's a terrific model, and was very, very pleased with it. These are much bigger. If you've never seen any Eaglemoss figures at all, these are much bigger than, say, the Doctor Who or Alien figures, and therefore the price was higher. But this is, fantastically accurate to the very first version of Batman. So there we go. Okay. And then the one I did after that, and what I had in mind was I would tweak one and then show you what I'd done at the end when I come back to the next one. But, that's not going to work if I'm not doing it regularly. So I never gave an update on the 50s one because I never did the 60s one. So here we are. This is the 1950s Batman. Again, pretty accurate. Again, had to do the skin. The grey was a bit too light than it should be, but as I said on the video on this one, there's no way I'm going to repaint that because that decal or screen printed bat symbol would be a swine to reproduce. And I've redone his utility belt, and I think, yeah, I've just marked out the join between the grey and the blue. But he's a lovely figure, although, as I said in his video, the head's a bit small for the body, don't you think? So finally, after 3 years, that's an update. All right. I don't think I'm going to be doing that from now on. I think I'm going to do a proper video for each of them and then move on to the next one. And so, yeah, next one's 70s. These all came with these small but very interesting. There's a sneak preview of what I'm just about to show you. Very interesting little mini magazines on key moments through the decade. I'm thinking, out of all the decades, I love the 60s because that's the TV series. I love the silliness of the 60s stories, but I also love the seriousness of the early to mid 70s when you had Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, and then later on Steve Englehart and Marshall Rogers, reinventing the fella. All right. So, yeah. Now, small problem here. There he is. That's what he looks like. That's what he's going to look like. That's what he looks like. He's here, but I think I've got a shot Batman, because look, what's all this going on? There's all these little pock marks all over him. Are they on the back as well? No. That's interesting. Look, there's a paint run there. Yeah, so that's all a bit weird. They don't look like air bubbles, or maybe they are. Look, I've never seen that on an Eaglemoss figure before. It looks like he's a statue that's been shot at. Oh well, but look, fabulous decal. I like the fact that this is an accurate Batman of the 70s. It's a much leaner Batman than the 50s. Let's compare and contrast. He's rather chunky compared to the 70s. Yeah, I really like him. It's a shame about that pockmarking. I don't know. I can't really do anything about it, can I? If I fill them in, I've got to repaint the grey, and then I've got to paint around that. And there's a hole there. I don't know. This might be a... Oh, and there's something hanging off of him there. Maybe this is why he's been reduced. Okay, I'll have a think about that, about what I'm going to do. But it's definitely the face, definitely pick out the join between the blue and the grey again. But I don't know what I'm going to do about that yet. That's making me nervous now, because the other one I bought is the 1980s one. Okay. What's he going to look like when I get him out the box? Tweaking is done on these two. Basically, I outlined where the blue met the grey, touched up his belt and put a wash to just break up the different surfaces on that. But speaking of surfaces, yeah, his pockmark bodysuit, I haven't done anything with it because, yeah, it'll be problematical to fill that, sand it, and find a grey that will match it. So I'm going to have to live with that. Yeah, so that's the 1970s Batman. Luckily, the 1980s Batman is not pockmarked. All right, same thing. Just broke up the join between blue and grey. Picked out some of the details on the belt with some Agrax earth shade. I've left his Batarang black, and yeah, in both cases gave the skin a repaint to match what I've been doing with the other two. What I like about these is, yeah, okay, he's pockmarked and everything, but here we are. Look, we got the 70s and the 80s, and I don't know if it's that clear. Yeah, it's clear enough. I like the difference because somebody's paying attention. The Batman of the 80s was stockier than the lean Batman of the 70s. So the 80s version has got, yeah, a bit more bulk about him. And also the grey is slightly darker than the 70s. The blue is slightly darker. So I don't know if this is a nod. Is this like a halfway mark going towards, you know, the Dark Knight Returns, really beefed up, really darker version? But I quite like it. So yeah, the only downside is those pockmarks. I might at a later date come back to him and do something. We'll see. So these two are going to join my existing two. Next up, I went back to HMV today, and they had two of the 2000s, and luckily there were two of these. And with Eaglemoss, it's always better to compare the two because the paint jobs can vary slightly. And in the case of this one, his white eye slits, this was the better of the two. So I'm glad I had a choice. So this is Batman 2000s, and it looks like I don't have to do too much at all. But before I open him up, I want to fill that gap. I've got 40s, 50s, 70s, 80s. I need to get a 60s and a 90s. So I'll come back. I don't know how long it'll be, but I'm going to start looking around for a 60s one next, just to fill that first gap.